What's up, guys? It's knowledge of self-determination. So, I decided to make this video here because there seems to be some sort of I shouldn't even say some sort of disconnect. There's definitely a disconnect in America when it comes to what terror attack is. Individuals who are threatening the peace and sovereignty of American citizens. I mean, it's it's amazing what gets overlooked in this country when it is put on the national news, and how apparently when white men commit acts of terror, it's looked at as them having some sort of mental disorder or being on drugs. But the instant someone claims to be a Muslim or are not of Caucasian descent, their actions are usually always deemed as terrorist acts. Now, let's look at this one here, this article here. The New York attack was labeled terrorism. The Texas shooting wasn't. Here's why. Look at this dude. I'm going to just keep going forward. What's terrorism? It's understandable that the New York truck attack, the deadliest terror attack in New York since 9/11, was called terrorism. The suspect, Sayfullah Habibullahvek Saipov, I'm sure I'm not saying that right, said he was inspired by ISIS and other ISIS sympathizers have used vehicle ramming attacks. He said he was inspired by ISIS. He said he was. But does that actually mean that he had any connection to ISIS whatsoever? No, it doesn't. He was a white man who claimed Islam and ran people over with his truck. Okay. But armed terrorists around the world have also charged into public spaces, firing indiscriminately at innocent people, just like Devin Kelly did when he killed more than 26 people Sunday at the First Baptist Church in tiny Sutherland Springs, Texas. The massacre, the worst in Texas history and the fifth worst in modern American history, killed about 4% of the town's population. That was a terrorist act. There was a man in Colorado in a Walmart who opened up fire in a Walmart. That was a terrorist attack. When Dylan Ruth went into that church and killed those 9 people, that was a terrorist attack. When that man, I can't remember his name, in Las Vegas, killed all those people, that was a terrorist attack. And I'm going to just be honest with you, I'm still not convinced about who was actually behind the 9/11 terror attacks. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, the timing on that was just... And then when you look at who is actually behind the creation of the Taliban in the first place. Yeah. So anyway, at a news conference Monday, Chris Combs, special agent in charge of San Antonio Division of FBI, said, "At this time, we don't have a terrorism investigation open. So why isn't the Texas church shooting being called an act of terror? Part of the confusion stems from the fact that the world has never really settled on a standard definition of terrorism." Okay, you know what? That is actually kind of true in a sense, but because there are multiple different labels for acts of terrorism, but we have right-wing terrorism. Is terrorism motivated by a variety of ideologies and beliefs, including anti-communism, neo-fascism, neo-Nazism, and a mindset against abortion. This type of terrorism has been sporadic, with little or no international cooperation. Modern radical right-wing terrorism first appeared in Western Europe in the 1980s, and it first appeared in Eastern Europe following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. I disagree with that because white people have been committing acts of terror throughout the world ever since their inception. I mean, let's be honest. When they came to America, this was an act of terrorism because they terrorized these people. And let's look at the definition of the word. See, the term terrorism comes from French terrorisme. I don't speak French, so pardon that horrible translation, or supposedly French way of saying that. From Latin, terror, great fear, dread, related to the Latin verb terere, to frighten. So, do you think that the people in that church that Dylan Ruth shot up were frightened? Yeah. What about the people in that Walmart in Colorado? Were they frightened? Yeah, I think so. Or what about the people at the church where that one jackass just shot up? Were they frightened? I would probably say so. Now let's see. Other research on homegrown terrorism. The think tank New America has compiled information on terrorist activities in the United States after 9/11. It details data on deadly attacks by ideology up to the August 2012 Charlottesville attack, when the guy got in his car during the anti-Confederate statue protest and ran people over and killed the one woman. Here's their breakdown on the number of deaths caused by individuals of different ideologies: 95 by jihadists, 68 by far right, and 8 by black separatist national supremacists. Black supremacy is a complete joke. This is how they get into the whole title of black identity extremists, when most black people at the most radical just want to be separate from white people so that we can control and limit the abuse that black people suffer at the hands of white people. But for some reason that's extreme, even though many white people, and I've heard this and had white people yell this to me myself, go back to Africa. But the instant we want to be separate, all of a sudden you want to label us terrorists and try to keep us from being separate, but then all you want is us to go back. I don't understand it. This circular logic, circular stupidity, I should say. So I'll continue on, sorry. Even individuals carry out jihadist attacks, however, are sometimes American citizens or longtime residents. The terrorist threat in the United States is almost entirely homegrown, as no foreign terrorist organization has successfully directed and orchestrated an attack in the United States since 9/11, says Albert Ford, a program associate with the International Security and Fellows programs at New America. Now, let's just, for argument's sake, concede to that 9/11 was carried out by Islamic extremists. Let's just concede to that for argument's sake, for the sake of this. Of 418 individuals tracked by New America who are accused of jihadist terrorism related crimes in the U.S. since 9/11, 85% of them were either U.S. citizens or U.S. legal residents, and about half were born American citizens, Ford said. Until the Ontario nightclub shooting, the number of deaths caused by far right-wing attacks outnumbered those caused by jihadism-related attacks, Ford said. The federal government has taken steps to address national threats from all groups by creating an Interagency Countering Violent Extremist Task Force, GAO reported. And let's not also forget the terrorism that white American police, white supremacist officers have been committing in the black community as well. These are also acts of terrorism, without a doubt. Now, this is the last article that I'm going to go over, just so we can kind of highlight this narrative here, because remember, white men have been committing terrorist acts forever. And let's look at the situation in Alabama. And they've been doing things in churches for quite some time too. When those 4 little girls got burnt in that church in Alabama in the earlier portion of the 20th century. I don't remember the exact year, but let's talk about these things. Let's talk about the terrorist acts that were committed by white people in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The terrorist act of delivering crack cocaine into the black communities, the peddling of guns into black and poor low-income communities. Let's be serious here. What about Tasmania and the extinction level event that happened in Tasmania with the British soldiers? White people have been committing terrorist acts forever, but never called themselves terrorists. So, white American men are a bigger domestic terrorist threat than Muslim foreigners. Since Trump took office, more Americans have been killed by white American men with no connection to Islam than by Muslim terrorists or foreigners. So, when President Donald Trump signed his since revised executive order banning people from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States. He claimed it was to protect Americans from radical Islamic terrorists, even though people in those 7 quote-unquote Islamic states had never committed any terrorist acts towards Americans ever, which is very interesting. We don't want him here, Trump told reporters at the Pentagon, where he signed the order in January. But in the 8 months since Trump took office, more Americans have been killed in attacks by white American men with no connection to Islam than by Muslim terrorists or foreigners. Radical Islamic terrorists inspired or directed by groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda do pose a clear threat to the U.S. There is no question about that. Before last night's deadly shooting in Las Vegas, the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history occurred in June 2016 when an ISIS-inspired man opened fire in a gay nightclub in Orlando, killing 49 people and wounding 53. And let me not also forget about Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing. That was also a terrorist act that was committed by a white person. What about the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski? Terrorist attack. Remember, these people were actually considered terrorists in America, and they were white people. But ever since 9/11 happened, they have not been labeling white people as terrorists. Ever since 9/11 happened, white America, white supremacy, has been sticking to the narrative of naming any other race of people terrorists, or any other race, religion, or creed of people, if you're not white or Christian, terrorists. You understand? I find it astounding. And ISIS-linked militants have killed or injured dozens of people in countries like England, France, and Canada so far this year, including 2 women killed in a stabbing attack in Marseille. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Marseille, France. And 7 people injured in a car ramming attack in Edmonton, Canada just this weekend. But here at home, the bigger threat has come from a very different kind of attacker, one with no ties to religion generally or Islamic extremists specifically. Here are just a few of the attacks that have occurred in 2017. Sunday night, a 64-year-old white man from Nevada opened fire on a crowd of more than 22,000 people at a country music festival in Las Vegas, killing more than 50 and wounding more than 200. We know that number is more than 500 now. In August, a 20-year-old white Nazi sympathizer from Ohio spread his car into a crowd of anti-racist protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia, killing a woman and injuring at least 19 others. In June, a 66-year-old white man from Illinois shot at Republican Congress members during an early morning baseball practice, severely wounding several people, including Rep. Steve Scalise of Louisiana, the House of Representatives Majority Whip. In March 2017, a 28-year-old white man from Baltimore traveled to New York City with the explicit aim of killing black men. He stabbed 66-year-old Timothy Kaufman to death and was charged with terrorism by New York State authorities. That was an act of terrorism. Now, here's the thing. He's a white man from Baltimore. He traveled to New York with the explicit aim of killing a black man. But I'm from Baltimore, so I know why he didn't go into the city and try to stab a black man, because he would have got his fucking ass kicked. And somebody probably would have murdered his ass had he done that, without a doubt. That's why he left the state and went somewhere where nobody knew him, where he could probably walk up on some homeless dude in downtown Manhattan and stab somebody without getting the backlash from people stomping a hole in his ass. I'm telling you right now, he would have went downtown on Baltimore Street, or he'd have went Chase Street, you know what I'm saying, North Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue. He would have did that shit anywhere in the city, tried to stab somebody like that, and he would have got fucked up. In May, a 35-year-old white man from Oregon named Jeremy Joseph Christian began harassing Muslim teenagers on the train in Portland, telling them, "We need Americans here." 2 men interceded. Christian then stabbed and killed both of them. In fact, between 2001 and 2015, more Americans were killed by homegrown right-wing extremists than by Islamic terrorists, according to a study by New America, a nonpartisan think tank in Washington, D.C. So, please, help me understand why it is that the narrative always gets switched from talking about this threat that white American extremists pose to American peace and sovereignty. Because you start talking to white people about this and they deflect and say Chicago. But here's the funny thing about Chicago. Black people aren't the only people that live in Chicago, and where the exact crime statistic numbers of Chicago, because let's take into account the unsolved crimes in Chicago and the people that the cops have murdered in Chicago. Are black people really committing all the murders in Chicago? I fucking think not. Chicago is a mafia town, man. We all know that. Al Capone. We all know this, man. Chicago is a big mafia town. You mean to tell me that the only people that are killing are black people? Well, if you look at the situation across the country and look at the statistics in the polls, white people are doing more murdering than anybody else. So we really need to bring attention to this. These people are terrorists, and they feel comfortable committing terrorist acts because this is what they've always done. But their terrorism is usually able to be covered up with the word patriotism. And I guarantee you that's what most of these sons of bitches probably think they are. Most of the jackasses probably believe that they are actually patriots. Just like there's a thin line between love and hate, maybe there's a thin line between patriotism and terrorism.